Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And I am so excited because today I am welcoming April Danann, who is an intuitive medical practitioner, I guess. She's a medical intuitive. That's another way of putting it. And as well as a naturopathic nutritionist and a herbalist. And so, welcome, April.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
And we seem to have a little bit of an issue with the signal today. So, our viewers are going to need to bear with us, I think. Um, but it's lovely to have you here. April, first of all, I think it might be good to explain what a medical intuitive is.
And you're right, the stable, so hopefully you can hear me
I
here. Yeah, good. Medical intuitive, it's a strange, I use the term medical intuitive because I don't have a better one. And it was actually, I think, Dr. Norm Shealy, who years and years ago in the 90s gave us that term because we didn't know what else to call ourselves. So from the time I was a teenager, when I was a young child, I could look at somebody and certainly tune into them. It's medical of sorts in that it's biological, but it's completely intuitive in that it's linked to you have a pain in your stomach and it's linked to this emotion that you're pushing down and you're taking it in from X, Y, and Z situations. And it's what the body is broadcasting. So if I'm always saying like and to be honest with you, it's the thing that I never talk about. So talk about how I think it was an astrologer recently or somebody who was interested in astrology who said that this was the year because it's like 29-year cycles he was talking about Jungian astrology or something like that. And he said things go in 29-year cycles and you're in another 29-year cycle where what is hidden starts to come forward. And so he'll say, he said you'll start to notice that a couple of years before you hit that next milestone. And I guess this is part of it in that the medical intuitive or the intuition side of me, because let's face it, who would take that seriously? No one. And I think for a large part of my life, I didn't take it seriously, but yet I rely on it 100%. I trust it 1,000%. But to take it seriously in terms of a profession, it's supported me all my life. I literally work full time as an intuitive, and I've never advertised people find me when they need me. But is that exactly what it is? Who knows? I think too that you go back to, I even remember when I was a child, doctors and GPs at one time, they'd look at a kid, and I remember seeing this, and I think it was even, around me, where you'd go in and the old GP would go, that child doesn't look well. And they just know, that they're cooking something, there's a fever raging and, blah, and there's measles coming or chicken pox or a good flu. Whereas I think that kind of thing is gone now, where people aren't even looking at you in the face anymore. And so that's what I try to do. So if that's medical intuition, I look at you in the face and we go from head to toe and we figure and we don't stop until we find out what's happening, if that makes sense.
It does. And in a smaller way, I think that many people feel that. So, years ago when I had cats, I always knew when something was not right just by touching them. There was something about their fur and the way that it felt when I touched them. that told me that they weren't feeling at their best. And Teddy, my dog, again, I can feel when his mood is a little bit on the low side. So I know he's a little bit under par, even if I don't know why. I
Yeah.
can tell it. And I know, the women out there, mothers, know instinctively when their
Mhm.
child is not quite right. So
Yes.
although it sounds for because we're so used to the idea that everything you have to have proof for everything, and we're used to being told that intuition is not real or not reliable, in our
Mhm.
hearts I think we can feel that there is something here. And what's beautiful about what you're doing is you've allowed that intuitive ability to flourish and to help you with your work. And you have these wonderful tools of herbalism and um, naturopathy and knowledge of nutrition and other things besides that you use. But that intuition plays a huge part in everything. And I heard you in interview with the lovely Celine O'Donovan on her Wild Woman podcast, and it was on the edge of my seat because I was so enthralled by what you were describing, which is why you're here, of course, because I wanted to hear more. But tell us about, so we can see that your intuition is guiding you, and you said something that is so amazing, that the body is broadcasting something. So let's
Mhm.
begin there. How does the body broadcast?
For all these years, and I'm going to back up a little bit because what you were talking about with your cat and your dog, your discernment, your intuition is picking up on what they're broadcasting. Where it comes from, my only explanation all these years has been energy field. Of course, again, we know things have an energy field. We are electromagnetic beings, with cellular structure. So somehow we do have a functioning energy field, which is where information flows outward. But what I've come to realize as well, going deeper into it and starting to study the fascia as well, so the covering around the muscles, connected to the skin, and it's kind of like microtubules of liquid that are moving in this crystalline structure. So I think that that's probably what absorbs the information from the body, from because it covers everything. So it's absorbing information from the muscles, the cells, the nerves, the organs. It gets sent out to the top of the body under the skin where you're still being protected, and then somehow filtered and fed into the energy field. And there are those of us on the planet that then can pick up those signals like a radio. So I walk into a room, especially when I'm on, if I and when I'm on, as if I've been working, say, for a couple of hours and I've been in a session with somebody, then my intuition is completely wide open and heightened. And so if I shift gears and go from into another room, I'll immediately know that plant needs help, or that plant is too much water. I'll know what the cat is thinking. I'll know you're just completely tuned in to everything that wants your attention. So that could be a tree, it could be an animal, it can be a human being, it can be a piece of wood. So even a piece of timber. So I've gone, I was very young at the time and I've kind of toned things down. So in my early 20s, I remember there was a carpenter, beautiful carpenter, living next door to us, and he was out late at night building this veranda around his this big deck, and these elaborately carved railings, beautiful work. And I one day went over when it was all finished, and the whole neighborhood got invited over to look at this. This was literally a work of art, and I leaned against the railing and put my hand on one of the spindles in the veranda and immediately pulled back. And I said, and he said, "What?" And I spoke the words that he said as he was working on that section. Apparently, he had cut his hand very badly putting up that section. I had no knowledge of that, but the wood had absorbed his shock, and I was able to relay that back to him of, my God, what happened here? And you know, and but anyway, and so it was quite an eye-opening event for myself as well, that the wood, which was living tissue, relayed back this person's words as they worked with the wood. So it was, and I've had lots of little experiences like that that are just kind of mind-blowing, that you can't explain, except that when something is living and alive, it is broadcasting. It's crystalline structure of some sort, or electromagnetic or cellular structure, which still holds water. And I think water is kind of key. And then that will talk. It speaks. It has a voice.
Wow. That's quite extraordinary. And I really like your explanation for this because the the thing that when I was talking about my cats and Teddy, the thing that I feel when I touch them, how I know that they're not quite right, is because it seems that there is a spark missing.
Mm.
It seems that they feel not lifeless because they're alive, thankfully, but they feel like they're lacking in luster. You know, the body
Mm.
feels more flaccid. It doesn't feel
Mhm.
quite in the same way as it does normally. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is thinking about the broadcasting. I once had a delightful budgie who was free to fly around the house, and our relationship was very, very close, if I can put it like that. He was just a gorgeous soul. But I can remember one of the things he used to do is he used to like to drink from glasses. So we had to be careful if we had a glass out, you know, what was in the glass, because if it was something we shouldn't be drinking. But there was a glass of water, and I was in the kitchen, and he was in the dining room. And suddenly, I just knew he was in trouble. Well, he was in trouble. He was drowning because he had got into the glass to drink and couldn't get out.
Right.
And I obviously I pulled him out, I think in time, and he was, you know, coughing and sputtering, but he was fine. And he was feeling somewhat sorry for himself. And of course, I was making a big fuss of him. And, you know, he was moving his head as if to, oh, stroke me here and oh, stroke me
Mm.
there. And, you know, there was a lot of reassurance that was needed. But I knew he was in trouble. And I cannot tell you how I knew he was in trouble. And I did not know what was happening, but I knew. And there he was, you know. And it's not the only time, because one of my cats also got herself into trouble on one occasion where it looked like she had found, I think she thought it was, you know, wild water, you know, some rainwater, but it was some sort of chemical in a bucket. I think it was white spirit or something like that. It's a long time ago. But I went running and found her just about. I managed to get there just in time. So that
Yeah.
we have these experiences, don't we?
Mhm. We do, and part of it is it's discernment, it's intuition, and it's like a flash. So I like to think of it sometimes. Now, again, there's probably different functions of ourself at work here, but it's probably your future self. Or I think some people refer to it as a higher self. That's one step, like 30 seconds or a minute ahead, and somebody doubles back to relay that information. And I get that. Now I play little games too. Like sometimes I do the remote viewing game. Like if I'm driving somewhere and I'm looking for a parking space, I will literally be remote viewing before I get there to see if there's a space, if I should even bother to go try and find a space there or should go somewhere else. So I do that quite automatically without even thinking of little tiny tricks just to remote view, things that would make it handy, and never even realized it was called remote viewing until, years later, because I've been doing it for so long. So in a way, that's like your higher self, or you're getting assistance somehow. And especially with pets and animals, they're family, so we're connected to them in every way.
I love that you're doing remote viewing for parking spaces. But I think the beautiful thing that you're saying there is play,
Yeah.
play with this.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's through that play that we're going to develop it and become more confident
Mm-hmm.
and learn to trust it more. I absolutely love that. So tell us about how you got into this. It seems that it was very natural to you, but have you always had this relationship with plants? Because being a herbalist, I imagine plants feature very highly in this
Mm-hmm.
intuitive connection.
Yeah. I have always been connected to plants, and I couldn't not be connected to them. So I think when I try to shut it down, and I have, like decades ago, I would get migraines and suffer. Literally, my life would not be going the way, it needed to go. But I remember being a teenager, and like late teens or early 20s, and you know how people would say, "What's your plan? What are you going to be when you grow up?" And I used to sort of close my eyes and think, I have no idea. I close my eyes and all I see are fields of lavender and fields of herbs. And at the time, not having the word herbalist to put on that, not seeing that even as a viable profession, but just knowing that everywhere I went from the time, it was not fashionable to be 19 years old and planting things in pots. And here I was, wherever I was, I had, if I just had a balcony, then it was full of plants. And if I had a patch of ground, I was literally out digging it up and putting in trees and putting in whatever that could grow. And I have this insatiable, this thing inside of me that I need to see trees. I've even had, psychics look at me and say, wherever you live, you must live near trees because there's an energy exchange there, and they feed you. So if I'm not around them, then I'm planting them. And I'm fortunate to be where I am, that there's loads of trees and we're still planting loads more. So my focus is often, like lately, well, in the last 10 years or so, medicinal trees is a big interest for me. But of course, I love, and I'm learning every single day. I have some colleagues in Nigeria and Africa, all different, places, continents, and we're exchanging information constantly, just to broaden the horizons of what they're using and what works and how to use it and why it works, so that we're learning. And that's the lovely thing about herbs, but plants will seek you out. I walk by right now, nettles are growing, so everyone's seeing nettles. And so instead of seeing, things that are weeds, look at them as food for this time of year. It's vital to us.
I
Yeah.
love that you say that plants seek us out. I've heard a few herbalists say that now, and I I can feel it, and I recognize what you're saying about that calling that we have a relationship with plants. Because growing up, I had, I was a very urban girl, and I lived in a city, and I was very much in my head because it was all about studying and getting through school, etc. But I can tell you where all the magnolia trees were on my bus route
Mm.
from home to the university, because every year I looked forward to seeing them bloom. And at that point, I didn't even really know what trees they were.
Mm.
Um, I can, and it's funny because although I grew up in a very urban environment, um, my childhood also urban. We were always on picnics. So it's my teenage years, my childhood in cities, but my parents always took us into natural places at weekends for picnics. And recently, I have been flooded with memories of my love of specific plants as a child and as a teenager, things that I'd long forgotten, but I now know they were there in my heart all the time. And so, the eucalyptus, for instance, how important eucalyptus was to me as a child, how much I loved it, and so on it goes. So we have these relationships, even if it takes a while for us to develop them. But for you, it was there, and you just seem to have run with it.
I think it's a bit of a language all its own. And for some reason, plants to me speak, they speak and they tell me how to use them. And sometimes they'll tell me their names. So there's that angle on it. And the other thing too is that I really feel that this is not my first lifetime working with plants. I think I've probably I'm carrying information forward from maybe multiple lifetimes or whatever, however that works. Because some of it seems to awaken. So there's each phase and each step of the journey you're not learning about plants, you're remembering.
That makes sense to me because the way in which you work seems to be so fluid that it feels like you have been doing this for a very long time because it's in your soul. Um, so talk us through how you work with a client.
Okay. So how I work with a client, so I'll get people will say, I'm looking for a herbalist. I have a master's in nutrition, so or I'm looking for a nutritionist, or I'm looking for, a naturopath, and I'll go, oh, great. Naturopath over there, herbalist over there, nutritionist over there. They're not looking for me. And I'll usually pass those people on. So when somebody is I don't know, either hears about the work I do or kind of looks at me in the face and goes, "What do you really do?" Then I'll know that person is meant for me. And so I always do a baseline reading. So first and foremost, I'll say to them, just give me your name and nothing else. No other details. I don't want anything. You give me a date of birth if you want, but it doesn't matter. I don't even need the person's name. That's just a formality. I'd like to write a name down. But as long as I've made contact, I can then listen to what that person's body is broadcasting, and I generate a report before we speak, so that my intuition is so strong or so sharp or so whatever that whatever the person's body wants to convey and in that time will come in. So then by the time, say if we're going to talk at 6 o'clock, I start at 5 o'clock. And I will generate a report at 6 o'clock. Then we talk and we're ready to go. And I literally open it up with, still, don't tell me anything. I'm going to read to you and you're going to get a copy. I'll text it to you. I send out a copy anyway by post of my notes. And I just start reading from head to toe the information the body is broadcasting. Sometimes it's mostly emotional. Most of the time, though, it's just we'll focus on a physical reading. So a lot of people say, April, give me my MRI, which is a snapshot. And we do, so I have a lot of people that come to me who are perfectly healthy. and they want a snapshot of where their body is today for the next year. And that's what we'll do. So what we'll then try and do is go through any symptoms, any issues that might be developing, little areas, hot spots, I call them, where it could be the gut, it could be kidneys, it could be adrenals or hormones and different things, and then link it to situations, emotions, spiritual, and on and on and on, structural, wherever we need to go. So I deliberately studied the things I have studied and continue to study, um, what my intuition guides me to. So I have degrees in science. I have a master's in nutrition. I studied food packaging so that I can make all my own, remedies, and then became a herbalist, naturopath. And continuing now, I'm doing an in-depth course in fascia and structure. I've studied massage therapy. You name it, I have done it. Any number of things just to have that knowledge base. Iridology. Um, I have several levels of that to bring in everything that I can possibly bring in to form that baseline for myself so that I can draw on all of these bits of information and give the person that snapshot. So it could be cellular, it could be DNA changes, it could be bacterial or what have you, but we get to the bottom of it. Because the body doesn't lie. The body is not capable of lying. The mind likes to play little tricks, but it's kind of neat that when I go into the intuitive, it's not channeling. It's like listening to a radio. I don't channel. I don't even like channeling. I could channel if I wanted to, but I'm not interested in it. So it's literally like sitting there next to a tree and letting the leaves fall and not judging the leaves, looking at them and recording where they are. So that's a snapshot of how I work. Some people want very surface and some people want really, really deep. And so we go where we need to go. The odd time, a past life will jump in. I've had some really nice experiences with that as well. Some interesting things have happened along, over the years. But yeah, so it's an intuitive session with a herbalist, naturopath, and nutritionist because I can draw on all of these different modalities.
I love it. So you have the snapshot,
Yeah.
you have a sense of what the person needs. What's next?
We literally talk through and we make a plan of one, two, and three things to be addressing over the next little while. So, for instance, it could be an emotionally challenged, I'm thinking now of a recent client, so an emotionally challenging situation that's affecting the person who carries they swallow everything. So the family is up in arms, a parent is about to pass away, and this person swallows all the family grief and stuff. So causing issues with stomach and digestion. So what we're doing is we're unraveling, and I have my own little tools for doing that, as well as being able to prescribe diet change, lifestyle, herbal remedies, and that. But I do visualization, a lot as well. So that's one of the big things that I do is I have my own techniques of visualization. Yeah.
So you make your own remedies, uh,
Yes.
which means you have your own apothecary, I imagine. Um, Tell us about where you are and how you go about doing this.
So how I go about doing this. So I have probably about 150 to 200 different recipes that I developed. I don't really follow anyone else's cooking. I
April,
will,
I'm just going to
yeah,
stop you for a moment because you cut out there.
okay.
So can you just say again, I don't follow anyone else's recipes and go from there.
Yeah, I don't follow anyone else's recipes. I kind of make up my own things. I let the herbs, decide for themselves for that person. So I'll often make up tonics. So I make up, say 300 ml tonic that's very particular for the person, a liquid tonic. And that can be a combination of remedies, syrup, honey. I have my own bees, so my own honey as a base, any number of things. Or it's for some people, like I got an email this morning from a usual client saying, I'm just back from holiday, I'm about to go back to work, send me something. And I love those emails, those messages. And I just said to her, all right, I'm going to send you a mystical woman tea. I'm going to send you an echinacea syrup and one of my vinegars. Perfect. Send it. Send me. And again, it's just relying on my intuition. And so I have these so many recipes, so many different blends that I make that we can just mix and match and plug them in and depending on what the person needs. Like she just needed to pick up and keep going. And so what I sent her was a vinegar for her gut, an immune boosting syrup tonic, and a hormone sort of balancer tea. And so we've got all these different things that she can use over the next couple of weeks as she eases back into work and life. So I don't know if that answers the question
It
at all.
does. It certainly does. That's exactly, what I was asking, because really what you're demonstrating is the level to which your practice is individual.
Yeah.
It's because you are so tuned into the the person
Mhm.
that you are now able to tailor make
Yeah.
remedies that are going to help them. Do you confine your work to the human side of the population, or have you ventured into helping animals?
Loads of animals, loads of animals. So I'm in farm country. All the cows and horses, and we have a farrier, we have a horse here, and he's only gets treated by me, and our farrier recommends me to everyone because he's never seen like when the horse came to us, he had laminitis and was quite lame. And now the farrier is very good as well, but he always says it's remarkable to see how this pony is now after 11 years or nearly 12 years with me only on herbs. So the pony gets his tea and his capsules and different things in his feed, and it treats his laminitis, which is non-existent now. But what I did for him at the time, because going in again, it was when we were talking before we started recording, it is all everything we're doing. Life, especially during this time, is all about trust. And so what I decided to do when I wanted to work with the pony was I went in and I looked back in time at recipes of herbal treatments for horses from hundreds of years ago. And I gleaned what herbs I could find there. Now, I still ended up mixing and matching because some of them don't exist anymore, or certainly they have different names. But even just to get one or two of those ingredients, the other thing I've done over the years is that if it's good enough for racehorses, it's probably good enough for us. Because racehorses are worth a lot of money. So I often look to what they're treating racehorses with, and then I'll go out, I'll have some of that. So, like diatomaceous earth, it gets given to racehorses, and used. And so early on, I adopted things like diatomaceous earth to use in some of my recipes because it was good enough for racehorses.
Wow. Do you ever venture into using flower essences or, plant essences?
Do you know, I had this conversation about a few weeks ago with one of my best friends. Um, I now I sure I'll tell you anyway. Whatever. It's okay. So, where do I start? Years ago, I used to only make plant essences using crystals and stones and plants. And again, the stones speak to me equally. And I still have some of the stones gathered from my travels from many, many places around the world. And certainly, anyway, from special places where the stones would ask, take me for your essences. And then I had this, so this is about 20 years ago. I had a colleague who asked to borrow the seed essences and then refused to give them back. I kid you not. And so the whole lot of it was stolen. And I had, so for weeks and weeks and whatever, I was ringing and knocking on doors and asking for my seed, my mother essences back. And then eventually I had to move on and let it go. And I hadn't made them since. I moved on. And so I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who makes flower essences. And she reminded me and she said, what happened? And I said, I think I shut that door. And she's like, it's time that door was opened again. And so this is interesting. I used to make them and I haven't in a long time, but it keeps coming up. It keeps coming up. So I do use crystals. I love crystals. I love rocks. I'm the one who, if you reach into any of my coat pockets, you will find stones and rocks and shells and sticks and twigs and little pieces of things that I pick up on my walk, and leaves or something unusual. And I then would make them into an essence, or I used to. So this needs to come back. This is a part of me that needs to come back.
It seems to me, wearing my therapy hat,
Mm-hmm.
that that was a trauma.
Mm-hmm.
To
Mm-hmm.
have something so personal
Yeah.
stolen from you
Yeah.
was a trauma, and so for that reason, it needs to come back because
It needs to come back.
you heal
Yeah. Yeah.
yourself from that. Because nobody could actually ever steal that from you.
No. No.
Felt like that because the physical part of it was stolen,
Yeah.
but you that could never be stolen from you because
Yeah. I still have all the
you
recipes. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it lives inside of you.
Yeah.
You know, I think that you're somebody who could put a twig in the ground and it will grow into a tree. It's just
Yeah.
that's the link I feel that you have with nature. So tell us about what you do to nurture this connection with nature.
To nurture. I don't really think about it, probably because of the way I live. Like you mentioned how growing up in urban environments, I didn't. I've lived in Amsterdam for a short time. I lived in Toronto for a short time. I lived in Chicago for a short time. And I always love it. I always loved where I lived. Um, but it's not where I want to be. And so I always gravitate into living quite wild and remote. So I'll even have people say to me oh, come back to, whatever society. And I'm like, why? But literally when I step outside my door, I'm on the ground and in a farm field. And there's trees and there's buckets and there's plants and there's everything growing around me. There's polytunnels. I can just look here now and there's raised beds. And I'm kind of situated right in the middle of all of this growing. So I would have to run a mile to get away from nature, literally. So it's impossible to disconnect. And to be honest, and I think I said this to Celine as well, if I want to go to the toilet, I have to go outside and go to another building. And it's deliberately set up that way so that there's different rooms. I have to walk across fields to get to my herb sheds. I literally have to in the rain and the wind and through fields and grass and muck and everything to go to work. And again, it's not under, it would be convenient to be under one big roof in a factory somewhere, but that's not, you do lose something. You lose everything, maybe. So this is the way I think it was done a long time ago, and I'm right back at it.
And
Yeah.
that is one of the many things that impressed me when I heard you. And that is why I asked you the question, because when I hear that, I feel that that is you nurturing that connection that is so inherent within you. And I think that I value that hugely. Um, I think in many of the conversations that I have on this channel, the link with nature as being the route to healing in whatever context we have it is of paramount importance. And the more disconnected we are from nature, the more sick we become, and the more disconnected from ourselves we become. So when I heard that, that this is how you're living, I thought, yeah, of course,
Mhm.
that's going to be strengthening this intuitive connection that you have
Mhm.
with nature, and it's going to be helping you to be the fabulous healer that you are. So um, I'm just so grateful to you for your time today and sharing your experiences with us.
You're very welcome.
If people want to find you, April, what do they do?
I have a website, sort of, aprildanann.com. I always say the easiest way to get a hold of me is to text me. I'm on all the social medias, which I try to put something funny or silly up every day. I rarely talk about what I do. The odd time I'll put up a picture of a product. But otherwise, I just let people. I guess there's so much in the world where everything is just shoved into our faces, so I kind of don't do that. I'll do the opposite. But I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. I have a website, and I'm in West Cork, and everyone pretty well knows me. I'm in the Skibbereen Farmers Market every Saturday. That's the easiest way to find me there. But send me an email or a text.
I'll be sure to be putting links so that people can easily find you in the description box. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy to talk with you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. Have a great week. And until next time, goodbye.